Hello and welcome to another Jay's Politics podcast, part of the Podcast 99 Internet Radio Network. You can reach me at jpoliticspodcast@gmail.com, on Twitter at jpolypodcast, or on Twitter and Gab at j_brown1981. And today I'm going to be talking about another thing that has to do with the Patreon situations and what's been going on around the internet that I think actually a lot of people see as a good thing, but I don't think it's necessarily is. It's one of those situations where it sounds like it's a good idea, but I don't think it truly is. I don't think it actually will do what it's meant to do. And what I'm talking about is, of course, changetheterms.org. There we go. And I'm going over their FAQ section. Now I know other people have done this, and I totally just do not agree with it. I'll be flat out right here that I do not agree with it at all. That it truly is a violation of our free speech. And just to get right into it, what is the goal of these policies? What's the problem it is solving? Just as the internet has created an immense positive value by connecting people and creating new communities, it also given new tools to those who want to hatefully threaten, harass, intimidate, defame, or even violently attack people different from themselves. This statement right here is a double-edged sword. And what do I mean by that? It is a double-edged sword because not only are they talking about the far right, the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists, and the like, but they're also talking about the far left, the regressives, the Antifa people. And here's what I mean, is they claim to be using these tactics right here as an offense against the people they dislike. But what they're hoping for is that, if this person's Antifa, we'll let it slide. Once you start doing that, you make your argument null and void. Once you start allowing certain people to be able to hatefully threaten, harass, intimidate, defame, or even violently attack people different from themselves. Newsflash to those that are on the left, the progressives, regressives, and the very, very far communist anarchist type people. And this goes for the right, for the white supremacist groups too. By using these tactics, you're using your own tactics against yourself. And you're opening yourself up for your own tools to fight against you. The very next sentence starts with white supremacists and other organizations engaged in these sorts of hateful activities use social media and other major tech platforms to mobilize, organize, fundraise, and normalize racism, sexism, bigotry, and xenophobia. Now, what is Antifa for? What's Black Lives Matter movement for? A lot of these groups claim that they're inclusive. Well, we just had the Women's March in California shut down because it is too white. Oh, but you can't be racist towards white people because racism is only power plus prejudice. And we only have prejudice against white people. We don't have power over white people. Well, you just proved that you have power by shutting down the Women's March because it's too white. They mobilize, they organize, fundraise, and normalize racism, sexism. If you're cis white male, regardless whether you're heterosexual or homosexual, you're automatically excluded. You have a bigotry towards those that are quote unquote normal. And as far as you're concerned, white people should just go back to wherever the hell they came from. I mean, seriously, how do you not see that this is exactly your position just from the opposite perspective of what you're fighting against? Honestly, how do you not see that? In the past few years, hate activities online have grown significantly as the quote-unquote alt-right emerged from the shadows. At the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017, we saw a prime example of how the internet's invigoration of hate groups can result in the real-world violence. Well, That's just it. They were content to have a peaceful march, a peaceful rally, where there's very few of them. And yet you have Antifa show up, who organized themselves, got themselves there, and were violent. I'm not trying to make light of the death of the young lady that was killed by a car striking her. No. But if the Antifa people had not been beating on his car, he probably would not have actually hit her. That is some food for thought. It's not like he gunned her down with his car out of pure rage. It's not like he actually got rid. He was like, "Damn it, I got to run over this lady." No, that's not what it was. But you sit here and act as if you have the moral high ground because you're using their tactics against them. Bullshit. Grow the fuck up. Realize that you're just as much in the wrong. Extremism isn't how you solve problems. It's being able to work together with those that you have common interests with and learning to bridge the gaps between those that you don't. There's a reason why people look back to the 80s, the 80s under Reagan with a nostalgia of, wow, that was such a great time politically because things were getting done. And that's because the politicians were trying to work together. Granted, against a common enemy, the USSR, communism, because they were all capitalists. Fine, be that as it may. But the fact that now we are going to an extremist viewpoints, we are going to these extreme measures. Now, it boggles my mind. What you have here is, let's see here. Meanwhile, the internet has opened up to unprecedented opportunities for diverse communities to speak, create, educate, and entertain by building direct connections with their audience and provide platforms to voices that would otherwise be silenced. Yet these same creators, including people of color, women, religious minorities, and members of the LGBTQIA community, are routinely harassed, threatened online. These attacks stifle their voices and chill their participation on these platforms. I agree. Nobody should be threatened. Nobody should be harassed on a platform such as YouTube, such as Twitter, etc. However, being critiqued for your ideas, for putting out your ideas, does not equal harassment. Just because I say I don't agree with you and this is why, X, Y, and Z, doesn't mean that I am harassing you. Doesn't mean that I'm being racist, xenophobic, sexist, ableist, whatever, against you. No. I'm trying to have a discussion with you, and you are choosing to take it as a direct threat of harassment. Maybe if you thought about what you're trying to do, what topics you're trying to talk about, you would understand that some of these ideas are not what everybody agrees to. Some of these ideas are not what people think are valid. And you have to, and when I say you, I mean the person presenting the idea, has to present the idea to change somebody's mind, or at least get them to think about your position. I sit here and watch flat earth videos all day long. I will listen to them present their arguments. And as long as they're being respectful to people, I will give them, okay, I can understand where you're making this assumption. However, have you thought about this? Is the way that one would want you to respond. However, the problem is once we get to the point of name calling by either side, the conversation's over. What gives you the right to call me a name as being a cis white male, talking about things like Black Lives Matters, the Women's March, things like that? If I'm just asking questions or if I'm throwing out a thoughtful idea, what is the problem with having a conversation? But most of the time when I talk about things, especially in my latest video about Riley Dennis and the universal basic income, they weren't attacking me or my position. They were attacking the fact that I must not want to help people. well, if I had $1 trillion, I would do this, this, and this. And it's like, okay, that's what you would do. That doesn't mean that's what I have to do. The rich don't have to stay in our country. The rich don't have to have their money in our country. They could live just as poorly as anybody else. What's to stop them from moving their money away? Get rid of it all, actually. Just say, no, I'm done. Wash my hands of it and just donate it to something that's offshore where the federal government can't touch it. What's to stop that? But no. I'm the one that's wrong. So that's my point. Is I have no problem with people doing that. Just be respectful to me and actually try and engage me in debate. All right. And it's, who are you and why should we listen to you? It's the next question. The signatories and proponents of these model policies are a coalition of civil rights, human rights, technology policy, and consumer protection organizations. These policies themselves were drafted by the Center for American Progress, Color of Change, Free Press, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under Law, the National Hispanic Media Coalition, and the Southern Poverty Law Center. These drafters spent approximately 9 months consulting with a wide range of civil and human rights experts and technologists to try and develop a thorough yet flexible set of policies. Why are you doing this? For the past few years, civil and human rights organizations have seen hatred grow online and watched as major tech companies have repeatedly failed to adequately address the problem that their own platforms are creating. The biggest problem you have is what you call hate speech. And what you call hate speech? Well, I'm not going to show you where I'm going to go. I'm just going to pull up a dictionary. I'm going to see if you can tell me what dictionary I'm using just by the definition that I use. So, hate speech, a highfalutin way of saying, I disagree with your meticulous, researched, irrefutable facts, so I'm going to organize a social media campaign to demonize you and ruin your life, but don't forget to donate to my Patreon, is the quote from this definition. That's just one dictionary. Let's go to another. Before I go to this one, let's go to another one. Speech expressing hatred of a particular group of people. That's another definition. Speech that attacks, threatens, or insults a person or group on the basis of national origin, ethnicity, color, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, or disability. Now, what do they all have in common? Is that they talk about attack, threat, or insults. I'm sorry that I've hurt your feelings. I'm sorry that we have done, however you want to say, harassment to you. But that is not hate speech. Calling somebody an idiot is not hate speech. Calling somebody, what's the term I want to use here? A prat for their ideas. Heck, even calling somebody a dumb cunt is not hate speech. It's an insult. But yet, if you are too thin-skinned to deal with words, then why? Why even be on the internet? Why even do this? And it's not the platform's fault. They For people that are in the United States, these platforms have basically become equal to a public square where I have the right to go downtown and say what I want to say on whatever topic I want to say, as long as I am not calling to violence on anybody, and as long as I am not threatening anybody directly. I can say I don't agree with President Trump on this topic because this, and this, and the city can do nothing to me. The state can do nothing to me. The federal government can do nothing to me. Now, if I say I think President Trump is an idiot and needs to be shot and killed, yes, they can silence me for that because that is no longer protected speech under the First Amendment. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Gab, Twitch, Bitchute, all these sites are basically the public platform. They are the public square to where we are allowed to express these ideas. Many of these sites, when they started out, were pro-free speech. And then as people got their feelings hurt, they've cracked down and started being more censorious. Why? Why do they need to be more censorious? Why do you need to have your feelings protected? Because of bad people. If a company adopts these policies as its terms of service, what would the rules be? Under these policies, a company commits to not allowing their services to be used for hateful activities. Enforcement. The company will use the best available tools with the appropriate trained and resourced staff, technology monitoring, and civil rights expertise to enforce the rules in a comprehensive and non-arbitrary manner. This right here, this section right here, does exactly what I say it will if they follow it to the letter of its intent, which is that if a leftist comes up to me and starts calling me names, harassing me, getting their channel subscribers to false DMCA claim me, to do any sort of thing against me, that is harassment, and they better be punished for it, regardless of what I'm saying. They better be enforcing that policy. But if as soon as they don't, they're in violation of these policies. And if they're in violation of these policies, then what's the point of having these? Many of the terms that they use are already covered in most terms of service. Many of the issues that they want to bring up are actually against the law in many places. But it is what it is. Right of appeal. Companies will provide notice and fair right to appeal to somebody if their content is taken down. This is particularly important for creators of color. So this is your opt-out against enforcement of them. Because if they start calling me derogatory names, I shouldn't be offended, I shouldn't be hurt. But if I try to call them anything remotely bad, I'm the one that's going to get in trouble for it. Yeah, that's fair. That's equitable. Transparency. The company will regularly provide robust transparency reports and data so that outside groups and researchers can effectively monitor the company's progress, studies, trends, and recommend improvements. If you're not being censorious enough, you're not going to be supported by us. Here's the problem, is what you are trying to do, what you are trying to get these companies to do is do what you cannot force the government to do, what you cannot force the federal, state, local governments to do here in the United States, which is censor your political enemies, to censor those that you disagree with, to censor those that challenge your ideas. I am all for the fair and equitable treatment of anybody and everyone. If you have the talent to do something, do it. To hell with your critics. Do it to the best of your ability and learn to grow your ability. You know, if I wasn't comfortable, well, let me rephrase this. If I wasn't as comfortable as I am now talking into a microphone, being on video, I wouldn't be doing this. And I'm not 100% comfortable with it. I fear many things by doing these things. But at the same time, I have the right to express my opinion. You have just as much right to not listen to my opinion. And that's where you miss the points. That's where sites like this miss the point. Is you don't have to listen to what I say or what anybody says. I mock flat earthers for fun because they are nothing but trolls and idiots. And I can think of quite a few right now that deserve to be called idiots. But be that as it may, that's not hate speech. State actors, bots, and trolls. Recognizing that social media is particular is a new front for information warfare, the company will take affirmative steps to identify, prohibit, and disrupt those who are trying to conduct coordinated hateful campaigns on the service. So, let's move on to the next section. What is a hateful activity? Will this initiative block free speech? As defined in the model terms of service, hate activity means activities that incite or engage in violence, intimidation, harassment, threats, or defamation, targeting an individual or group based upon their actual or perceived I, actual or perceived race. So I can just say I identify as, Nigerian, a dark person of color Nigerian as a white person. Are you going to accept that from me? Hell no, you're not. Religion, national origin, ethnicity, immigration status. Immigration status. Oh my gosh. I have no problem with people who come here legally, who come to our ports of entry that do it legally. However, when you organize as a massive group to enter at whatever point you want to enter, no, that's illegal immigration. Because of the strict definition, yeah, I jumped. Sorry, immigration status, gender identity, sexual orientation, or disability. Because of the strict definition of hateful activity found in the terms of service, these policies will not block free speech. First, as an initial matter, the First Amendment does not apply to the policies of a private company. It only applies to the actions taken by the U.S., state, or local government. Well, that is true. A private company does have the right to police its own platforms, its own publications, if you will. However, if society as a whole uses said platform as a way to convey ideas, as a way to express themselves, does that really make them a private company? Especially, Facebook is traded. I think Twitter's being traded on the internet. I mean, here's the thing. If I say the next, $1 billion Mega Millions or Powerball jackpot, I win it. And I go buy a crap ton of stake into Google and Twitter and all this other stuff. Does that mean I get to tell? Does that mean I get to tell my CEOs and stuff, especially if I buy a large enough portion that I could actually, maybe have the majority stakeholding? Does that mean that I would actually get to tell them what to do? I could reverse all of this garbage? You guys would fight that tooth and nail. But, I digress. But even if it did apply, the First Amendment does not protect all speech. We carefully wrote, okay, yes. Here are the carefully wrote the definition of hateful activity to cover types of speech the courts have said that are not protected as free speech: incitement, violence, intimidation, harassment, threats, or defamation. Now, the the thing here is all of these are basically one and the same. You're inciting violence or threatening via imitation violence. Harassment, it can be used if you're constantly doing it. Or threats, again, threatening violence or harm. But defamation is a little bit harder to prove because you have to prove that I've damaged you in some way, that I've hurt your brand in some way. And all I have to do is say, all I did was call them this. It's not hateful. This is my opinion of their intellectual point of view. Again, that's their. It's hard to prove a defamation case without showing that there was substantial damage done to the brand. You know, if I were to just go around and start spreading the rumor that, company A that makes this food product uses rat meat instead of beef meat or chicken, that's defamation because that could actually potentially grow to something bigger that would hurt their brand. But if I said that I think Riley Dennis doesn't know what they're talking about because I don't agree with what they're saying, and I think that they're an idiot or whatever, is not harassment, is not defamation, is me expressing opinion. And I am entitled to that opinion, and I'm entitled to say it. We also looked into hate crime laws to determine what types of characteristics to protect. It is wrongful to discriminate against somebody based upon their immutable characteristics, those personal traits that one cannot change, or that are fundamental to one's identity. See, here you go again. Actual or perceived, immutable, which means you can't change it. By your definition here, as I could say that, well, because you put perceived in front of race, I can choose to change my race. I can choose to identify as a different race. And you don't understand that. You don't understand that that's what I could actually argue against you. But down here you say that it's such as immutable, such as race, color, religion, national origin, etc. There are several legal obstacles which serve important purposes to prevent government action from unilaterally solving this problem, even if we wanted to. Moreover, yes, you have what you're saying here is that you have a problem with free speech. You have a problem that not more is included in your hate speech coverage. But yeah, it bothers me. It bothers me that you guys actually have issue with words. You hurt my feelings. Are you worried that these policies will be used to silence minorities online? Yes, we are always worried that any of these policies could have a disparate impact on minority groups, but we have to look realistically at the situation we're facing today. First, minorities are already receiving desperately discriminatory treatment from many tech companies. Many, if not most, tech companies are already creating and enforcing rules about what type of content to allow on their platforms. In our experience, these rules are often poorly written or inadequately enforced. They often only respond when somebody affirmatively reports a violation. Sometimes trolls abuse these systems by flagging legitimate content. Where have I heard that before? I don't know. Here's the thing. Is there plenty of big, just on this platform alone, YouTube, there are plenty of big YouTubers who are quote unquote minorities that make more than most of the non-minority people on there. Yes, you get some big people like PewDiePie that, build a brand. But if you work hard for it, why should you not be rewarded? Why should, because I don't have as much as PewDiePie, I should get what he's got because I am X, nationality, or I am X religion. It makes no sense. It should never be about the equal outcome. It should always be about the equal opportunity. You have to put forth the effort to do it. There are plenty of um, people of color who are on YouTube that flaunt their wealth, and they said, "Oh well, I grew up in this neighborhood, or I grew up in this area of the country, etc., etc. I rose my way up." I applaud them, and in all sincerity, I applaud them for the simple fact that they worked hard, they found something they were good at, and they are earning a living at it. And most of the time, I don't bother with them. I let their I leave their channels in peace. When they say something that I disagree with, I might go on and actually comment. Fine, whatever. Or I might eventually do a response video on it. But I might not. Because in all honesty, it's their opinion. If I find something that I think is very ludicrous, like universal basic income and how it's proposed by Riley Dennis, I'm entitled to make my response video. I'm entitled to do this about anybody and everyone. And anyone and everyone can make response videos about me. By all means, go ahead and make a response video about me. I don't care. All I ask is that if I'm trying to be respectful to you and be fair to you, then be fair to me. If I call you an idiot, call me an idiot back. If you feel that you want to get into a harsh name calling, be prepared. But I'm willing to play along. I'm not here for the animosity. I'm here for a conversation. And I would love to have conversations with people, but nobody wants to have those conversations. Because as soon as you mention one thing that disproves anything that they say, like the fact that there are universities in England that are treating white men like me as a minority in their recruitment, that we are now getting an affirmative action. I don't agree with affirmative action at all. If you can get there, if you're deserving to be there by your grades, by your work ethic, then get there. I have no problem with that. What companies do you want these? Okay, so you want social media, video sharing, communication marketing, event scheduling, blah, blah, blah. So basically, you want to deplatform people. You want online advertisers to pull their ads from these companies, these social media sites that don't conform to your rules. You want Patreon you want Patreon and GoFundMe and the like to pull out from underneath these content creators and these sites. Public chat or group communication. So you want them spying in on every conversation that every person is having. Domain names. Building or hosting websites, blogs, or message boards. These policies are not intended to be used by internet service providers, Comcast or AT&T. Wow. You're committed to an open internet. No, you're not. You are not committed to an open internet, because if you were committed to an open internet, you would challenge these ideas, not try to bury them. Maybe if you could actually talk salient points about them instead of yelling at them, you're a Nazi or you're an alt-right extremist or blah, 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 and actually come up with, hey, when this was done back in the 1940s, this is what happened. The Holocaust happened. The Italians tried to take over Africa, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Look at what the Japanese were doing to mainland Asia, and the island hopping. These are all things that when you're dealing with real fascists, real neo-Nazi types, you should be able to make those arguments against them. Be like, look, why do you think this is true? Well, here's why. Here's scientific study X, Y, and Z that proves you wrong. You're not going to change their minds per se, but if you can at least get through to one or two, you just drop their numbers. That's how you're going to defeat these ideologies, these thought processes. It's not in a battle of name calling, not a battle of physical violence. It's going to be literally with a battle of words and intellect. There's a reason why there's still flat earthers out there and conspiracy theorists. Yes, there are conspiracies out there. I'm not going to say that all conspiracy theorists are nuts, but there are ones that believe that we didn't go to the moon. There are those that believe in the flat Earth. There are those that believe that, you know, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are sitting in some hangar bay doing whatever. I mean, come on now. How will you measure whether these companies are complying with these policies? Through their reports. Technology changes quickly. Are you worried these policies won't keep up? These model policies are meant to be a living document. This is version 1.0. AI and machine learning algorithms are often infected with bias and produce discriminatory results. We believe it is unrealistic to expect human reviewers to adequately monitor most large tech platforms. Agreed. The volumes of data is just too large. Without technology assistance under enforcement would be rampant. The human reviewers would always be swamped with too much content to review, and only the most egregious or loudest cases would be addressed. Here's the thing. I agree that there is too much workload for a human. I also agree, though, that there is a bias in AI and machine learning algorithms. What you need to do is have the algorithm set up so that it flags it to a reviewer but doesn't disable the content. If I were to throw up a DMCA claim against somebody for using my content without crediting me, and it was not educational, was not basically under the use of fair use. They literally just uploaded my stream, or they uploaded this video without my permission, mirrored it, and did nothing to it to change it. I would be within my right to do that. And what you do is you have the AI go and review, yes, this is it. Send it to a human reviewer to review. Oh, yep, this is it. Then strike it. If it gets a few hundred extra views, fine. If it's on a monetized channel and I'm not monetized, send that money my way for a change. I mean, it's very simple to maybe, instead of letting the machines do all the work of disabling channels, disabling things, to be like, hey, I have found suspicious activity, review it. And it could be something as minor as using derogatory terms to call somebody a mongoloid. It could be used for, um, minor terms as calling a white person a cracker, things like that. Just have it reviewed. Now, if you see a bias in the company for a lot of banning of right-wing people because of their use of terms, but not enough in the left wing, then it needs to, these policies need to reflect that and be able to challenge that. But and that's just it. These points in the FAQ is horrible. Now, it bothers me that there are so many groups that are signed up to this, that they are all left-leaning companies or organizations. And I'm not saying there is not actual hatred, racism, sexism, or anything like that out there. I'd be lying if I did. I'd be lying to myself if I did that. But by trying to silence them by force, by telling them, no, you can't be a part of the discussion, you're basically just making them dissent and grow louder. And there are parts of the internet you can't even reach without the right knowledge, without the correct information. And yet you sit here and act as if this policy will solve all of these problems, that these policies will continue to solve all these problems. I mean, it just boggles my mind. I mean, they talked about Charlottesville. All right. Let's go back to my camera feed here really quick. So they talk about Charlottesville in this. And let's go 2018. Unite the Right rally. And when you look at the pictures of the Unite the Right rally 2 in Washington D.C. and all that, there was hardly anybody from the right there, but it was mostly Antifa. It was mostly those people that were there to stop the hatred. And what did they end up doing? They ended up fighting with the police that are there to try and help them contain these people. But at the same time, these police officers and whatnot have a duty to respond to protect those citizens that have this that have the right to say what they want to say. Again, as long as they are not inciting violence, they are not harassing or intimidating, they can say that they would prefer to see X group exterminated. I mean, I remember growing up watching a whole host of documentaries that talked about the various KKK meetings in the late 70s and early 80s. And you have the KKK spewing their stuff. You have the police officers there protecting them. But you didn't see the crowd mobbing the police necessarily, getting in their face and saying, why are you protecting this person, yada, 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 and then assaulting the police officer. No, you just saw them getting in the police officer's face, and the police officer just stood there and took it because what can they say? They have a job to do. They have a job to protect, even those that have views and values that they don't agree with. You know, why is it? My question to you, my audience, to anybody that watches this, why on earth have we gone from talking and trying to solve our problems to just violence whenever you see somebody you disagree with, automatically calling them whatever you want to call them? Regressives, if you're on the right, calling them the leftists, or alt-right, or neo-Nazi, or Nazi. So these terms lose all meaning. These terms have no value. If I get called a regressive by somebody on the right, I'm just like, whatever. If I get called alt-right or Nazi, neo-Nazi, whatever from the left, I'm just like, whatever. Because I know who I am. I know where I stand, and I try to stand center left on most issues. There are times where I do venture center right on issues. And that's just because I value my rights that are protected under the Constitution. My First Amendment rights to freedom of speech, to freedom of press, to freedom of assembly. I also respect other people's right to freedom of religion. I have no qualms with anybody that is Muslim. Are there bad Muslim characters out there? The jihadists and things like that? Yes. But most of the Muslim people I meet and interact with on a regular basis are kind, caring, compassionate people that just want to be treated as people. I know atheists who treat people who are of religious beliefs like they're pieces of crap. I know atheists that treat people who have a religious belief with indifference, like, you believe what you believe, I believe what I believe. That is, as long as we can have that mutual respect, I can be friends with you. I can deal with you. But when you get these people that are just violently opposed to each other for no other reason than they just conflate everybody in a particular grouping as this type of person, it just boggles my mind. It's crazy. But anyways, I digress. I was hoping not to take this long on this, but I've read some news sources here that have actually talk about ending the Electoral College. Let me pull that up here. Here we go. And I'll use everybody's favorite news source, CNN. This was updated yesterday at about 2:34 Eastern, or roughly. Oh God, do they actually have to have this video? Come on, give me the chance to pause this video. I probably will play the video just so that way we can discuss it and have a fair point about it. But come on. Let's mute it first. Sorry, while I'm waiting for that, I'm checking something else. I just got a notification on something. Nothing really worth my time.
Americans do not vote directly for their president. I'm not talking about a government conspiracy. I'm talking about the Electoral College, a system that has been around since the birth of our nation.
Sorry about that, but trying to pause the video, and it just did not want to let me. Okay. Anyways, my point that I'm trying to make here, and let me get this pulled back up, back over here, and go with this. Congressman proposes eliminating the Electoral College, preventing presidents from pardoning themselves. I don't know that any president has, quote unquote, pardoned themselves. However, I do find it rather funny that it is, that it is a Democrat doing this, but whatever. Representative Steve Cohen has proposed 2 constitutional amendments, one that would abolish the Electoral College, one that would prohibit the president, and one that would prohibit presidents from pardoning themselves, their family members, or members of their administration or their campaign staffs. Okay. I can get behind the one that pardoning, the prohibited certain pardons from the president, but it is what it is. It's the Electoral College one that I want to talk about. All right. Calls to abolish the Electoral College intensified in the aftermath of the 2016 election, when former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton won a popular vote but lost the presidency to Trump when Trump won the majority of the Electoral College. Similar calls were made in 2000 when former Vice President Al Gore won the popular vote but lost to the Electoral College to George Bush. Both losing candidates were Democrats. I wonder. Let's just do a quick Bing search. Past president. Oh, I cannot spell today. All right, let's see here. All right. So, since keeping track of the popular vote versus the actual Electoral College. So, let's see here. Winner and party, runner up and party. So, oh wow, would you? Huh. Interesting. It's just interesting staring at this information. Basically, where here you had Truman beating out Dewey. I know it wasn't actually popular vote issue, but it's funny how all of these elections are, you know, with popular votes. I'm losing my train of thought here. My brain's just running too much. Um, Getting to the back to the point. The point of the electoral college is not to. The point of the electoral college is not for preventing people from voting for who they want. It's to allow the voice of the people to be heard as a whole, not in a popular form, but in an understanding of that there are going to be splits in the demographics where people where the population could vote where the majority of the population can vote one way that would that would set up a constant flow, a constant going forward. You know, very rarely do you see times where every state. Oh, that would be a good idea. Uh, I spelled it wrong. Excuse me. Oh, hey, look at this. I don't care about live election results, but you go through and you look. You see all these states that are blue, especially over here and over here. These are all states with that have high population densities. And all these red ones, with the exception of Texas and Florida, which does flip from time to time, they all have smaller populations. Where are the times where you see a majority of red? Would you have Ronald Reagan, or sorry, George H.W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, Nixon, LBJ. Oh, look at that. We voted for Nixon back here, my state. Yet all this blue beat out all of this red. 56 was Dwight D. Eisenhower. The way they were presenting this one was literally Dewey wins, and yet look at all that blue for Truman. You know, look at these swings. You know, for FDR. This is why we have the Electoral College, is to allow our population to understand that it's going to change. Its tendencies change. You know, these gray areas are obviously not states, or as Red Rhetoric would like to call them, not the U.S. But going back through, you can see where things change, you know. But is there ever a consistency all the time? No. Things change, and if these major population centers change, they can swing the vote. And if they stay consistent, which I know this doesn't prove my point, but if they were to stay consistent, especially, you know, California stays blue, because let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that was what? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of the last 14 presidential elections, California's voted as a state for the Democratic candidate. You know? Bush was carried it because of Reagan. Ford, Nixon. LBJ because of, you know. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make with the Electoral College is that it's not a bad thing, yet we want to believe that it is. So I'm actually going to pull up this video here from CNN. Don't copyright. I'm going to critique this CNN. pull up this volume again. No, hold on. Let's start that over.
Americans do not vote directly for their president. I'm not talking about a government conspiracy. I'm talking about the Electoral College, a system that has been around since the birth of our nation. What is the Electoral College? The Electoral College is not a building or institution. It's just the name given to a designated group of people who cast each state's official votes for president. This group is made up of 538 people. Each state has a different number of electors based on their representatives in Congress. So, states like California and Texas have more votes than states like North and South Dakota. The only exception? The District of Columbia, which has 3 electors despite not having any voting members in Congress. How does it work? Each party selects their own group of electors. Each state then empowers the electors who represent the candidate who won the most votes, except Nebraska and Maine, who award electors based on a combination of statewide results and districts won.
Now, this is an interesting point, Nebraska and Maine. I like their idea of doing it. Divide your votes. Instead of having all states or all your counties have to vote one way or the other based upon the way the state votes, have them vote based upon the districts. If you have 55 electoral votes, then you should have a presidential candidate can earn 30 of those, or 20 or whatever. My point is, they have it right, in my opinion. Whether you agree with me or not, that's irrelevant to me. I mean, I'll have that argument with you all day long, but I think they have it right, because that would allow states like Washington State, my state, for example. We are predominantly a Democratic state, a blue state, as many people would call it. 2016, and I will use this presidential election by county map. I know I'm going to go over an hour with this, and I don't care. This is just too important to me for me not to want to do this. So come on, get to the actual art. But look at my state here. This is Washington State. Okay, this is Pullman. Okay, this is where Washington State University is. This entire county. Look at all this red. You would think by this we would have voted for Donald Trump as a state. But in all actuality, because of these blue areas, predominantly this one and this one, we voted for Hillary Clinton as a state. Is that fair? Instead of voting by county, literally show the map by the districts and see how the districts vote, and then give it to them. Because here's my county, Mason County, voted for Trump. I didn't. But, it is what it is. Thurston County, this county seat, voted that way. Vancouver, it's down here right next to Portland. This is why I think Nebraska and Maine have it right. Do it based upon the district's votes. That's all you have to do. Do it based upon the district's vote.
Candidate who receives at least 270 Electoral College votes becomes the next president. What if there's a tie? If there is a tie, or if somebody doesn't get to 270, the House of Representatives appoints the president, and the Senate chooses the vice president. Why does this system exist? In short, the Electoral College was created as a compromise of several different proposals by the nation's founders. Critics say the system allows candidates to become president without necessarily securing a majority of voters' support, which happened in 2000. Advocates argue it ensures less populated states aren't completely ignored. How are these people selected?
And I am one of those advocates. I am one of those people that shows that the smaller states don't get ignored. Going back to this map here, these populated pockets are all liberal cities. Reno, Las Vegas. Phoenix, I think, is in this area. Mesa or Tucson, Albuquerque down here. the entire I-25 corridor here. Billings, Bozeman. Um, God, I can't think of it right now. I drove through it. I just don't remember. Boise. You know, you have all these sections where it is predominantly liberal, and it's because they are bigger cities. I mean, even Texas has their Democratic representatives. But when you look at maps like this, when you look at the images like this, you see where that it that the votes changed. See, look, here's Maine. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Maine voted 3 for Hillary, 1 for Donald Trump in Maine. Nebraska voted all 5. Let's go back and look at some others. Let's see. Oh, does that have a Nebraska with a blue? Nope. Thought it would give me a nice, see how it gives it a nice little indicator there. Heck, when was the last time Nebraska actually voted blue? Seriously, the last time they voted blue with Lyndon B. Johnson? But my point is like, see, this doesn't even count as a whole district right here. This is just a little section of their state. Oops, that's not what I was trying to do. But the point is we need to have an electoral college. Because again, it is the smaller states that need to be looked out for because of the higher population centers.
The electors are chosen by their political parties in each state. The only rule is that they cannot currently hold office. Can an elector ignore the popular vote? Yes. It's called a faithless elector, but it's rare and it has never affected the outcome of an election. Some states require formal pledges enforced by fines and possible jail time. But historically speaking, members rarely depart from the will of the people.
So, the whole premise of this video is that you want them to do away with the Electoral College because it's not the will of the people. Yet, the will of the people is served by the current system, just not a popular will of the people. So, let's, I don't have numbers in this breakdown here. Well, let's say that these blue counties all equaled up to 270. These blue counties / districts all equaled up to 270 votes for Hillary Clinton. And the rest of these only equaled out to 175, we'll say. I don't know. We'll just hypothetical here, okay? Anyways, let's just say that we did it entirely by the popular vote. Okay, so if every state voted by its popular vote to do the Electoral College, and let's just say, because of the population density, these big states had to move to, especially a state like Texas, it had to move to a blue state. Arizona have to move to a blue state, etc. Things like that. And swing the vote. Would we be trying to get rid of the Electoral College at this point? I know many of you out there will say yes, we should, and that we would. I don't think so. I think had Hillary won via the Electoral College and not the popular vote, we would be hearing the same thing from the Republicans that we're hearing from the Democrats now. And honestly, it needs to stop. Our system is actually quite fair, whether you agree with me or not. I believe it to be quite fair for the simple fact that it does allow States like Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, North Dakota, South Dakota, to have their voices heard in the voting of the president. Because these states have very small representation. And what more is that in well, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. What more in all of this is if we switch to a Nebraska and a Maine idea of how the electoral college system would work, you would see more Donald Trump campaigns in Washington State, Oregon, Nevada, California. You would see more Hillary supporters going to Texas. And I mean, literally, Hillary going there all the time, going to these hardcore red states that are predominantly held by. Oh, actually, here's one. I missed in my earlier assessment of Nebraska. They had one district vote literally for President Obama. But my point still stands is that look at all this red area. If we treated Nebraska and Maine, or the rest of the country like Nebraska and Maine, we would actually have a better representation. We'd have more interaction with our presidential candidate. Now, the problem is that the president, while empowered to represent the country in matters of state, etc., under his position as an executive, is not entirely a representative for the people. The representatives of the people for the government are our members of Congress. They are the ones that we deal with on a regular basis. They're the ones that we need to talk to about change and about how to get things done. But I know nobody's going to care about that point. I mean, I'm already an hour and 8 minutes into this, and you guys aren't. Most of you aren't even going to get to this point. I might actually edit it out and have it 2 separate videos. We'll see. But I digress. My point still stands that I disagree with this representative's position that we need to get rid of the electoral college and just go solely by popular vote. The president is elected by the people via the electoral college. He is represented. He is not a direct representative of us. He helps run the government. And when I say he, I'm literally meaning because we have not had a woman or any other gender identity serve in the office. I'm not trying to be sexist or ableist or anything like that. But it literally has to do with the fact that we haven't had it. So the president's position as of right now is a man. So I'm going with him. He is not based as a direct representative of us. Yes, he represents us in diplomatic matters. So does his Secretary of State. So does his Secretary of Defense, Secretary of the Interior, Postmaster General. So does, the cabinet, the Secretary of Revenue, Secretary of Justice, etc., etc., etc. They all represent us in some capacity, and they're not elected. Should we elect them too? Do you want your ballot to be so long that you just don't care anymore? I mean, seriously. The electoral college is a sound system, whether you like it or not. I happen to think that. It is my opinion. Disagree with me all you want. That's fine. But say la vie. I'm going to let this go, and we're going to move on from there. So, back to my 2 points here. And just in case I decide to keep this as one whole video. Hate speech, having changed the terms, dictate to me what I can and cannot say because they view it as harassment or not, is bullshit. it is a violation of my right to free speech. Whether you agree with that it's a government or private company doing it, it is still a violation of the free speech that we have available in this country. Second of all, the Electoral College is here to help us. And when I say us, I mean the people in the smaller communities. So they don't get drowned out by the populous city centers and major populous counties. Just because you're not a part of, Wyoming doesn't mean that their voice is any less important than those that are in LA. Well, LA has more people in it. Yeah. How many of those people are legal immigrants? How many of those people are legal citizens able to vote? I'm not going to say that all legal immigrants voted illegally, but where there's smoke, there's fire. There is obviously some form of voter fraud going on. It just stands to reason that it would happen. And I'm not talking just on a national level. I'm talking there's probably people who get in elected via state elections and whatnot where there's violations. So, just let's get away from the horseshoe of the two extremes and come back more towards a middle ground where we can all talk and discuss things. That's just all I care about. That's all I want, is for us to be able to have civil discourse. But the people on the left and the people on the right don't want that. They want us to go to war so they can wipe each other out and then try to claim victory. So they want those of us in the center to just become so exacerbated by this to just give up, which is not what I'm going to do. If I have to try and found my own political party at some point to rise up against the right and the left, then I will, if that's what it would take. But I don't know. We'll have to see. Anyways, this has been another Jay's Politics podcast, part of the Podcast 99 Internet Radio Network. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If I split this into two parts, great. If not, if I do split in two parts, I will create a second ending for the first part. If not, I keep it all together. This is the end of the show. You can reach me at jpoliticspodcast@gmail.com, jpolypodcast on Twitter, or j_brown1981 on Twitter and Gab. Have a wonderful weekend. For those of you that are continuing on in the NFL playoffs, enjoy your team's success. Hopefully they don't play as horrible as my Seahawks did. Have a great weekend.